This is Crumar Spirit. Crumar made organs. They're an Italian company. They were big in the 70s and 80s. They're still going to this day. They made a few synths. I've probably written about some Crumar synths in the past. They made one synth in collaboration with Bob Moog, and that's this synth. It's the Crumar Spirit, a 2-oscillator mono synth, which bears a bit of a resemblance to the classic Mini Moog. Crumar made about 100 of these in the early 80s. They made no more. I don't think they were a big hit, and for a while no one really paid attention to them. But then, as we've all gone back and rediscovered interesting old analog synths, people started to appreciate and celebrate the Crumar Spirit to such an extent that Crumar this year, depending when you're watching this, but in 2023, Crumar said they were going to make 100 more. They are exactly the same as the originals, with one difference, which is there's a MIDI port on the back. Otherwise, according to Crumar, these are the exact same synths. They're made with the same components. All of the functionality is exactly the same. I got this week. I was in the first batch of people to be sent these synths, so I think there might be a dozen already out in the hands of consumers. I got mine on Friday. So that was yesterday. So this is really the first time I've kind of played around with it. And I just wanted to make a video because as a rare synth, there won't be that much out there. There's not even very much out there in terms of videos about the original Crumar Spirit. Let me just show you around the synth. We got a master tune up here, a master octave here. And the reason why the octave switch here controls the octave of both oscillators, oscillator A and oscillator B, is you independently set the octave of oscillator B here in relationship to this. So you can have it unison, which is the same octave as set here, minus 1 octave, so it's a 1 octave below this one, above 1, above 2. Then you have 2 other settings on setting the octave range, wide and bass. These both decouple the keyboard so that oscillator B will just play the same note. Let's just listen to oscillator B. Down here is the mixer, so I'm just having the volume of oscillator B up. Set to bass. There's no pitch at all. It just sets one pitch, and you set it with this interval, which is essentially the tuner for oscillator 2. From an F, up there, down there. It's so that you can have both oscillators playing at once, and the oscillator B will just play a sort of drone behind oscillator A, which will actually have a pitch like this. You can hear oscillator B is just playing an F every time I hit the key, while the oscillator A is playing the notes around it. It's a nice effect. Wide is the same, but this has a much wider range of octaves. So with this one, you can set oscillator B to really be something much, much wider, as in all the way up to, just listen to oscillator B. I can't hear that. I can hear that just about. And down to clicks like that. So a little bit of a detour, but there are going to be a few with this synth. That is the wide and bass setting for oscillator B's octave range. Back here, waveforms for both of them are the same, from triangle to sawtooth, with 4 different widths of pulse width in the middle, and a way to sync them like this. It's the only synth I know that uses these big, chunky rubber keys, same as on the original. Okay, so master, oscillator A, oscillator B. We're going to go down to the filter section, which is where things already start to get interesting. We've got this upper filter and then a lower filter. So you have 2 filters that I think run in series, the upper filter first, and then that goes through the lower filter. And you can use the modulation routings to affect the filters independently. You have a separate resonance and cutoff for each filter. And the filters are fundamentally different. The first is a low-pass filter. Let's turn off the other filter, and we'll just listen to the low-pass filter. It's got 2 slopes, a 12 decibel or a 24. and a keyboard amount, which you'll understand is keyboard tracking, just to open up the filter when you're playing higher notes. If you turn on the lower filter with this, you get 3 different types of filter. First one is overdrive, so you have a kind of saturated overdrive filter. In order to use the resonance for this lower filter, you hit this so it's up on low. So now we're going to open the filter a bit, the main filter, and then play with the lower filter. You can hear the saturation, the overdrive. Other than that, you've got a bandpass filter. And finally, a high pass filter. That is how you have essentially 2 filters that run in series, and the way that you control them. Not super intuitive, but there you go. Into the envelope section, you have a standard 2 envelope setup. One is an amplifier, which acts pretty normally as far as I can see. Let's turn off the second filter. The second is a filter envelope, which seems to act a little strangely. It doesn't feel very snappy to me. Up here you have a trigger, which is just going to select whether the envelope triggers every time you hit a key. Here you have the output selector, where you can select either to have the keyboard on, which is what we've been listening to, or mix in individual outs that come from these 2 sections, Mod X and Shaper Y, the 2 modulation sources for the synth. You create the modulation over here, and then you introduce the modulation by selecting a destination for Mod X and Mod Y here with these wheels, and then controlling their depth using these 2 wheels. One is X and one is Y. Let's start with Mod X. It is an LFO, a sample and hold, and an arpeggiator. The arpeggiator, let's start with that because it's pretty simple. You can set it to ripple, which is just up, arpeggio, which is going to play my sequence and then repeat it up an octave and down an octave. Then you have leap, which plays the notes that I play, but randomizes their octave. At least I think that's what it does. You can also use Mod X as an LFO. It has 2 shapes, the triangle. The way we need to do it is to set the destination for that LFO over here. So let's set the destination just for oscillator A's pitch. We're going to introduce it here. I'm not hearing it now. You can have a square LFO. Down here, you have a sample and hold circuit. Let's have it modulating the pitch of oscillator A. Whew. Okay, let's take out oscillator B. Then you have red noise, which is essentially using noise to modulate now the oscillator A's pitch, which means it's just going to be absolutely all over the place. Finally, you have a way to use oscillator B as the source of modulation here that you can then send to oscillator A and other things over here. Just to jump over here so we can look at all the destinations that you can send Mod X to, you've got no modulation there. You've got oscillator A and B's pitch, just the pitch of oscillator A, the pulse width of oscillator A. So up here, if you'll set it to any of these 4 pulse widths, it will then modulate the pulse width using this as a modulation source. Then you have a way to modulate the filter cutoffs of both the upper and lower filters at once, or just the upper filter. So for instance, now, if we introduce that modulation with this wheel, Okay, going on to Shaper Y, it's kind of a similar thing, but it doesn't have an arpeggiator and it doesn't have a sample and hold. You just have the rate of an LFO down here, the shape of an LFO from a sawtooth to a triangle to a ramp, and up here, the behavior of the LFO. And this is also interesting and not something I've seen on other synths. The LFO can be made to run free, as in it will just run in the background, and whenever you hit a note, it will just encounter the LFO at whatever stage the LFO is in. Let's demonstrate this by using Shaper Y control to oscillate the lower filter. And in order to make this work, I think you have to have this down set on dynamics. So here, we're going to hear the LFO here from Shaper Y, free running and controlling this lower filter's cutoff. You can also have keyboard hold, which means the LFO will kind of fade in at the beginning with an attack, and as long as you hold the key, the LFO will be static, and then when you release the key, it will again start to modulate wherever it's being sent. Reset is going to reset the cycle of the LFO every time you hit a key. And for this, we're going to send it to the pitch of oscillator B so it's easier to hear. And if we set it faster, it's going to hit that pitch faster. So it's just whipping at the pitch of oscillator B very, very fast with an LFO every time you hit a key. Finally, run will just introduce one cycle of the LFO every time you hit a key, so it will just go. Or slower. Okay, so that is the two modulation sources and the various ways that they can behave. Finally, let's come over here to the wheel destinations, the mixer, and these benders. I've kind of touched on it already. So the wheel destinations takes Mod X and Shaper Y, whatever they're doing, and sends them to the various destinations listed here. You can sync the modulations together. This is just the main volume output. This is the mixer that just controls the individual volume of oscillator A, B, and a noise. And down here you can just introduce audio signals generated by this modulation. So if we turn down oscillator A and B, put these, say, like this. I think you hear the Shaper Y path I need to read up about. But I will say it has a little filter attached to this, so everything you put in, you can filter it. You also have a ring modulator, which sounds lovely. The signals that come through here, they don't go through the filter or the envelopes. So you can't shape them over here. Okay, there it is. That's the new Crumar Spirit. There are about 100 in the world. I think they all sold out when Crumar announced that they were going to be sold. They weren't cheap, so it's really nice just to play with it though, because it's an interesting synth and a lot of interesting ways that the LFOs act and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to playing with it loads, learning how to use it a bit better, and making some music with it. So thank you for watching, and if you have any questions about the synth, please let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot.